If you've ever plugged a guitar into an amp, then you know that you need one of these, a 1/4" cable. And if you've ever used a pedal board, then you know that you need two of them, one cable from your guitar to your board and another one from the board to your amp. So why on earth would anyone ever need 4 cables? Let's talk about the 4-cable method. Hey, Cass here with Temple Audio. Before we dive into the 4-cable method, I think we need to first touch on signal path. The order in which you connect your pedals will change the resulting tone. There's a few thousand threads online arguing about what correct pedal order is, as it really is a matter of personal taste, but there is a generally accepted go-to order. Most people prefer their overdrive pedals before their delays and reverbs. If I place my drive pedal before my reverb, the character of the distorted guitar still comes through, but it sounds like I'm now playing distorted guitar in a cavern. If I swap the two pedals, the decay on the reverb is now going into the overdrive pedal, and the entire cavern now becomes distorted. This is because even the trails on the reverb are now being overdriven. This may be a creative effect if you're in a wild shoegaze band, but in general, not the standard choice. The same concept applies when using an amp. If I plug a reverb pedal into the front of my amp, the reverb will be affected by the amp's EQ and character. If the settings on my amp are relatively clean, then this effect will be pretty subtle, but if the amp is distorted, you will again end up with that distorted cavern effect. Enter the effects loop. An effects loop allows you to inject pedals after the dirtier preamp section of your amp, but before the clean power amp section. This ensures the character of your amp is being fed into your delays, reverbs, modulation, etc., and not the other way around. In order to properly utilize an effects loop, you will need, you guessed it, 4 cables. Hence the name, the 4-cable method. This of course doesn't include the short cables running between your pedals. Start by plugging your guitar into your tuner, compressor, boost, drives, pitch shifters, and anything else you want before the preamp section of your amp. Run another cable out of the last pedal and into the front input of your amplifier. You will then want to find your amp's effects loop send, usually on the back panel of the amp, and run a cable from the send to the first pedal in your effects loop chain. This will include your delays, reverbs, modulation, anything else you want after the preamp section. You then go out from the last pedal in that chain and into your amp's effects loop return. Temple Audio offers a couple of options that will make this setup much cleaner and easier. The 4X mod is 4 1/4" jacks in a small enclosure that mounts on the side of your Temple board. Whatever you feed into one side is going to carry through to the other. This keeps your cable runs tidy and easily accessible, as opposed to kind of sprawling all over the place. Plus it saves the jacks on your pedals from excessive wear because you're plugging in and out of the mod instead of your pedals. The 4X mod can of course be used for a variety of setups besides the 4-cable method, but this is just one specific example. When you're running 4 cables over a longer distance, you may begin to suffer from the treacherous tone suck. This is caused by high output impedance combined with cable capacitance forming a low pass filter, essentially the same circuit as the tone knob on your guitar. And most of the time, it's not super desirable. I'd personally prefer to have more high frequency in my tone and be able to cut it with an equalizer than try and boost frequencies that simply aren't there. The 4X Mod Pro V2 offers the same functionality as the 4X mod, but with added features, including 4 discrete Class A buffers to obliterate tone suck. The low output impedance on the buffers brings life back to your tone over long cable runs. Each channel's buffer can be bypassed with the flick of a dip switch for cases where you don't want to be buffering. For example, putting a buffer before some vintage fuzzes can really ruin their mojo. In most cases, however, the safest bet is to leave all 4 buffers on to ensure the most pristine tone. The auto loop feature on the 4X Pro is super helpful if you often switch between amps with or without effects loops. With auto loop engaged, you simply unplug the effects loop send and return cables from the amp and the mod, and the signal path is automatically routed so that your effects loop pedals are now after the drive pedals, but still before the amp. This saves you having to reroute your entire board to change between having an effects loop and not having an effects loop. If you have a simple practice amp at home with no effects loop, auto loop makes it super easy to plug in and play. Or maybe you're at a gig and your amp bites the dust right before a show and you need to borrow an amp, without an effects loop of course. Auto loop would save you from scrambling to reroute your board so it properly functions. This is just a general overview of one way to do the 4-cable method. When you introduce things like multi-effects and modelers, the setup can look a little different, but the general idea is still there. If you have any questions on the 4-cable method or any of our mods, feel free to leave a comment below or send us an email. Be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the little bell icon to be notified when we release a new video, and we will see you at the next gig.